Hello! I didn't see you there. Anyway, how's it going, guys? That was so bad of an intro. Anyway, we're gonna do a fly on the wall, and we're gonna do it on this track called Karma by Zach in Love.
Zach in Love.
Yep.
I guess, yeah.
Cool track. We're gonna do it in 2 parts again. Instrumentation first, and then we're gonna look at the vocals. So yeah, show us what you're doing with the instruments.
Yeah, so I got these stems in pretty good condition. So I didn't have to do a lot of fixing. I'll play it real quick just so you can hear it, and then what I did on the kick really made a big difference here. So.
Darling on dog liquor, it's in those deep. Karma's a bitch if I ever met her in defeat. Mama said negative drama ain't for the elite. Done paying for sins now, you grab the receipt. Dog liquor, it's in those deep.
So, big thing that I started with on this, I didn't like about the kick was this right here. So, turn off everything else. Just hear that because very annoying.
Oh yeah, super resonant.
So it's not a ton. I'm not even 6 dB there, but emphasizing about 225 and then the rest of the low end, cutting that just kind of made it fall away in the mix. You don't hear that at all anymore.
It helps to clean it up as well. Cause
Yeah.
What is that? What was that
It's
around?
120.
Yeah, I mean that would really muddy things up.
The way the bass line moves, it was just getting in the way, or then at random points it stood out too much.
Yeah.
It was, especially in headphones, all I could hear was that woo 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 over and over and over. And so that made a huge difference. And then with that fixed, added some attack to the top end and the mid range. And it's
adds that kind of air to the top.
yeah,
right?
it makes a huge difference, especially with the bass brought in. And with no side chain, this is what it sounded like.
Oh yeah.
So because that bass has a couple octaves of things that you do want to hear, that on the kick was completely useless. And then of course the thing I think I've talked about every single time we do a video is this super fast, really deep sidechain. And since the kick is kind of big, you don't notice that this bass is going away like this, but it clears out a ton of space for it.
Well, yeah, because you would have to, because the kick is it dominates quite a lot of the frequency range.
Yeah.
You're going you're kind of using it as the lead instrument rather than
Yep.
rather than the bass being the
And
lead for that, right?
yeah, when there's no vocals, that's essentially the whole song except for when there's no bass playing, then there's the synths really. But for most of the song, it's the vocals and the bass and the drums.
Yeah.
So those had to be super tight and perfect, especially because I wanted to try to get this really loud in your face. The kick resonance and the sub-side chain were really the 2 biggest things that did that.
Now, where is the sub on the same stem as that as the bass?
Yeah, all the bass is only right here. And then
And that's another stem, is it?
it's the same track.
Same track.
Yep.
I see.
So
Oh,
it's
I
just
see.
kind
Yeah,
of 2
yeah.
different parts right here. But that just repeats in different sections throughout the song.
Yeah.
But it's a very like full spectrum sound in a way. It's not just the sub ever. So it's always sort of playing like a lead role.
Yeah, because there's no like lead synth or anything. There's no lead line in this, is there?
just that, but it's kind of just like a pad always going through. That's always like under vocals and stuff. It never plays a main role in the song.
Now, is that really wide?
This?
Yeah.
Let me stick this here and we can solo the side.
So it's pretty wide, yeah.
So it is quite wide, and then I actually widened parts of it even more. Again, because it's not super prominent in the mix, and there's not a lot of like background vocals and things happening everywhere. So I wanted that to just kind of fill
out the sides.
everything, and then the vocals, the bass, everything is like right in your face all the time in the middle.
Yeah, otherwise it would feel a little bit empty, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Although when you've got everything just straight down the middle,
Yeah.
it makes everything kind of feel a bit.
And to emphasize that, I used this at the beginning of my mastering chain, which is very
I've never seen
different.
this.
Taupe.
Yeah.
It's a tape plugin from Acustica that has just, I can't even, however many this is, times 4, different tape machines. There's like cassettes and a whole bunch of stuff. But this is very decorrelated, I guess, left and right. So it emphasizes the width more again.
Because it treats them differently.
Yeah. So even like with the drums. You stay open. It's kind of hard to tell, but at the end, when I turned this off, it made a big difference, making it feel like, because this is totally in the box, but it gave it a little bit of that analog, like, just the shifting of the signal.
Yeah, I see.
And so that, again, since there's a lot of focus and drive in the middle, it added just a little bit of interest around the sides, like widening that synth, even though it's already super wide. Just those little things that emphasized things that weren't necessarily important.
Yeah.
And just kind of kept them there.
Now, did you end up widening like any of the low mids in it, or just?
Yeah, I actually lowered the very bottom too, a little bit.
Oh,
so, with the stereo eyes on, and it's not. There's not a ton happening here. So it is just a tiny bit. I guess not
barely
here.
hear it.
It must
Yeah,
be
yeah.
at certain points in the song, but this especially.
Now, a lot of people can be kind of scared to widen in like low mid areas, because like traditionally it's kind of like if it's too wide in that area, it can get kind of muddy.
Yeah.
When do you know when you feel safe to kind of add width in that area?
For this, it was kind of a creative. Like, I wanted this to be a little bit like dirty, in a way. I didn't want this to be like pristine, everything super clean and in a perfect spot. So I, like with taupe, kind of spreading everything, especially the low end.
Yeah.
Like the kick, you can make the kick totally mono and run it through that, and then all of a sudden it's spread a little bit. So
okay.
For this, it just kind of felt nice, like, because it was kind of a dirty, saturated song to begin with. It has like these filtered vocals.
It's quite kind of lo-fi.
It's kind of like not a negative vibe in the song, but like it's kind of a dark song. So giving it that width in that, the synth kind of, the low mids and even that low end, wherever that comes in under 70 hertz. Obviously I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
It just made it, especially like in headphones, or if you have a really good system to listen on, all of a sudden you had these little bits of like different wide things happening that you're not used to.
Yeah.
A lot of times if you want something super loud, it is a bad idea to like overemphasize the low mids and the low end, obviously, but
Because you won't be able to get as much volume out of it, technically, but
it's going to kill that, especially if you want something super loud and punchy. But for this, getting it really loud in that process, that meant making it kind of wide and like extra distorted
Okay.
instead of clean and loud.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And that's why like the Kendrick album, Damn, and some of the Migos stuff, and like a lot of those are super mono, but they have certain elements that are really wide and
Yeah.
like purposely distorted.
Yeah.
Kind of along those lines where I overemphasize that to make it of interest instead of trying to make it clean and then just push the song as loud as possible.
Yeah, I understand that. So, but then when you end up, I mean, there's always that issue of widening things and then having to worry about phase alignment when it's in mono.
Yeah.
Obviously, you hit that point of like, how much can you manage to get away with without ruining, or without creating more problems.
Yeah. And that's
Just by doing it, right?
yeah, over and over trying different things, just kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't. The nice thing about using this to spread things is it doesn't affect the mono.
Oh yeah.
So-
yeah.
Even doing this with like a kick or something sometimes, like because this kick is kind of like stompy and dirty.
It's a lot of room kind of sound
Yeah.
to it. Yeah.
And I've done that, like trying to use like the Illenium kick thing where it's like everything is super sidechained and the kick is like wide and has like a room sound on it.
Yeah, where
You
the
can
kick is.
spread things like that, and because that's the only element of like what's happening at that moment is that sound. And
Yeah.
so you can take up space with that, and then everything else is kind of cleaned up, and it creates a lot of like perceived loudness and different interest in that way.
It does. It is, and it's quite a popular thing that's going on these days as
Yeah.
well. That kind of really roomy, stompy kick and slower BPMs or half-time BPMs.
And yeah, since this already had all of that stereo information, I could have made it mono and made everything super clean.
Yeah.
But it kind of worked with the song that you felt that, especially in headphones, you feel it happen a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get that a lot with a lot of like modern songs. Everything's super tight down the middle,
Yeah.
precise. So I like doing things different like that sometimes, and I think it turned out well with this.
It does add a lot of character to the track as well.
Yeah, and like if you listen,
If I ever met her in defeat, mama said negative, drama ain't for the elite. Done paying for sins, now you got a receipt.
Yeah, you can actually hear that on the side, and it's quite interesting to listen to.
yeah,
and then
it's-
bring back in the center again.
yeah. It's the same with this. It just kind of like tickles your ears on the side
Yeah.
a little bit, and it is quite low for it to be spread that much.
But because there's not tons going on,
Yeah,
you're able to get away with a lot more.
yeah.
with
There's a
that,
lot
right?
of like consistent sounds, and so once everything fit together, I could then like kind of pull everything out a little bit. There's not a million different things coming
Yeah.
in constantly that get in the way. So
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, because
yeah.
I know I've had issues with it before where I've been like, I've gone a bit too wide, gone a bit too wide, and then it gets a bit muddy and I have to backtrack a bit.
yeah, I'd always rather try to make things wider than have to go backwards.
That's yeah, fair enough. Well, all right, so let's cut this one off here, and we'll get on to vocals because you did some interesting stuff because there was 2 different mics, right? You
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that
This
were
was
recorded with us?
like a 2-part mastering on the vocals here. So
Cool. Thanks, guys.